everyone, welcome to the midterm recording for this quarter. This is a special recording session that is specifically for the fall 2021 course. Before I get into sort of details about the midterms and all that fun stuff, I do just want to sort of acknowledge that you have made it this far in the course already, which is awesome. And I want you to take a moment to sort of recognize that and celebrate that, because for most of the folks in this class, this is really the first time you're learning this new field of computer science, and it's a little bit weird at first. So I know that some stuff you're still practicing and getting used to, but definitely want you to take a second to sort of acknowledge and celebrate the stuff that you've already learned. And what a better way to test that knowledge than in a midterm exam. So let me just pull up, I have the course syllabus up right now just because I want to give you a reference of sort of where we are in the course with respect to everything else. So we are getting very close to this part right here, this midterm exam window, November 8th through November 10th. So I do want to give you all just some details and sort of logistics of that and how it's going to work, especially since this is a fully online class. And yes, the exams are online as well. So let's just dive into things, and really everything that I'm talking about on this video is also going to be covered in some content that I'm giving you during week 5. So this is what week 5 is going to look like. At the time that I'm recording this, it's not quite published, but it will be very soon. But in week 5, there's, you have your typical part A, part B pieces, and then in part B, in the videos and notes, I do just want to make a quick call out. Let me pull it up. There's going to be one video here. I'm getting the embedded version in still. This original video is a recording from a previous quarter, and it will mention that it's going to talk about the midterm policies and stuff like that. This video will not talk about it. The video that I'm about to post will talk about it. So if you scroll down a little bit, there will be a midterm video right here. And this is the video right now that I'm recording. So you will have that video that goes over all this stuff. I also have this additional page here. You can access that page as well from the modules page. So I have an extra section under week 5. We have our part A, part B. We have our weekly assignments, and then we also have this midterm information section. This midterm exam information, this is the same link as this link right here, and it will take you to this page here. All right, I know this is kind of a long page. I do apologize for that in advance, but I want you to have all the information that you need about the exam before you get into it and as early as possible. So logistics-wise, the midterm exam, it's going to be hosted on Canvas, and it will be available to take between November 8th and November 10th. So it opens at November 8th at 11:59 p.m., so basically the morning of November 9th. And it's due by end of day, November 10th, 11:59 p.m. So that's basically giving you a 48-hour window to complete the exam. Now that window is, inclusive of when you need to start it and when you need to turn it in, meaning you need to have the exam turned in by this deadline right here, November 10th, 11:59 p.m. You can start it whenever you want within this 48-hour window, but it has to be submitted by this part right here, November 10th at 11:59 p.m. So just make sure that you start it with enough time to complete it on time. I'll talk a little bit more about details on that in a second. There's no exceptions to this deadline whatsoever for the exams, for the midterm and the final. So please, again, make sure you get your midterm exam submitted on Canvas by November 10th at 11:59 Pacific. All right, let's talk about format. So the midterm is going to essentially have 2 different types of questions. The first part of the exam will have 30 multiple choice questions. Those multiple choice questions are going to look, apologies for that. These multiple choice questions are going to look really, really similar to the homework quizzes that you've been seeing already. So similar format, multiple choice, you pick one, you get it or you don't. They will be worth 1 point each. So that part of the exam is going to be 30 points total. So 30 multiple choice, 1 point each for 30 points total. And then there's also going to be one additional question that's going to be a free response programming question. And I know this is going to be the first time we're going to see this in this class, so I do want to take a little bit of time to talk about what that means, what it's going to look like, just to make sure that you are prepared for it. This free response programming question, it's basically, it will show up on the exam like kind of the multiple choice questions you've been seeing, except instead of the multiple choices that you can sort of click between to choose your answer, you're going to get a text box on your screen into which you can type whatever you want, right? That's where you're going to type your answer. So basically, it's going to be a question that says, write code that does this. And you're going to have to write the code into the text box. This question is going to be worth 10 points total. It will be one question, but it's one piece of code that'll be worth 10 points. Again, this is going to be done in a free responsive text box on Canvas, all part of the same quiz. It'll be just right after the 30 multiple choice questions. Then question 31 will be this text box question. Something that's a little bit weird about it, I'm going to talk about this in a second, but since this is a free response text box and Canvas can sometimes be a little bit wonky about formatting, there's something that you absolutely have to do before you start typing out your code into your answer box. So I'm going to pull up a quick sort of piece that I added here. So under, again, I'm looking at the week 5 module in Canvas, and then under this midterm information section, I've created an extra quiz. This quiz is ungraded. You don't have to submit anything for it. It's really just there for you to practice typing stuff into this text answer box so that you can see one before the actual exam happens. So I'm going to pull it up. This is the teacher view. So let me get into sort of the student view of what it looks like. So again, this is just a practice quiz for that one question on the exam. So again, it'll look like, a question on your quiz, on your midterm. This comes with some instructions of, use the space to practice writing code, blah, blah, blah. On the actual test, this will say write code that does, whatever. Obviously, I'm not going to tell you right now, I know. And then there's this little note here that says it is required to select pre-formatted instead of paragraph above the text box where you type your response before you start typing. All right, so what that means is this text box right here, this is where you're going to put your response. But before you start typing it, what I want you to do is click on this sort of drop down right here that says paragraph, and instead select pre-formatted. What this is going to do for you is if, let's say for example, maybe you need some indents in your code, this pre-formatted option will save those indents when you submit your exam. If you don't do this pre-formatted option and you keep it as the default paragraph, Canvas is not going to guarantee that it's going to keep all of your nice formatting, which is very, very important for this class. As you all know, Python is very picky about indents. So again, this sort of practice quiz, this is an ungraded quiz. This is literally just for you to practice typing code into Canvas directly. So you have an opportunity to do that before the exam comes around. So again, just make sure you're selecting pre-formatted, because see, if you see here, I just switch back to paragraph and my tab is gone, right? So make sure you're doing pre-formatted and it will keep your formatting for you. One other sort of weird thing that I ran into with Canvas, and some folks have already seen this in just sort of some responses that I've been giving feedback on assignments. If I press tab right here, I'm pressing tab on my keyboard and it's not doing anything in Canvas. I don't know if this is a browser limitation or if Canvas just isn't happy with pressing tab. So if you're, taking the exam, you can't press tab, my suggestion is instead do 4 spaces, 1, 2, 3, 4, and let that represent an indent. I know that's kind of annoying. This is one of the quirks of us being fully online, is that we sort of got to use the tools that we have available. So this is why I'm giving you this sort of practice space in advance so that you can take some time to practice using this sort of submission tool for writing a code question on Canvas. So again, biggest things to call out before you start typing into here, click on this piece right here, make sure you have pre-formatted selected. If you need to have indents, you're probably going to have to use spaces instead of tabs. I recommend using 4 spaces. It's kind of a standard. The most important thing though is that whatever number of spaces you have, if you have another line that is also indented at the same level, just make sure they match, right? These have the same number of spaces in front of them. I don't want to see something like this, because then I'm going to get confused about, are they at the same level of indentation? Did you mean to do that? And so on. So just make sure you use the same number of spaces to represent your tabs. So thing that I do want to call out about that is, yes, your syntax will matter for this question. So when I say syntax, I mean stuff like, your indents, where your commas go, where your quotes go, where, just where other punctuation like that will go. So that is part of that midterm question. Formatting and syntax matters and will be graded. All right, a couple other things that I want to call out about this programming question in particular. In addition to, let me go back to this example. So in addition to this sort of reminder of, hey, make sure you select pre-formatted. Right here, you'll have the actual prompt of what you need to write code for, write code that does this. In addition to this, there will also be a table in this question that is going to act essentially as my rubric for when I'm grading this question. So if I were you, I would use that rubric yourself when you're working on that question and make sure you're hitting all the marks, right? It will literally tell you, you get 1 point for this, you get 1 point for that. So it's kind of similar to what you've seen in the assignments. So double check that rubric if you're getting stuck. I think that's also a sort of great place to get hints about how to write your code. So again, free response question, formatting syntax matters, so make sure you're using pre-formatted instead of paragraph. Use that sort of practice quiz that I'm giving you here. You can submit as many times as you want to this practice quiz, which is different than the midterm. The midterm you can only submit once, but the practice quiz is for practice. You can submit this as many times as you want. Practice typing out code, practice making sure that you can make nice pretty indents that are very clear as to what they mean. Practice with different syntax, stuff like that. And then just going back to overall format. In general, I think the best prep for that question in particular is, reviewing previous assignments that you've done, the labs, the programming assignments, all those extra practice exercises as well that have been posted on Canvas. As far as the difficulty goes for this question, I would say it's between the difficulty of a lab assignment and a programming assignment, though it's probably closer to the difficulty of a lab assignment. I recognize that for the programming assignments, you have multiple days to do it. And, for the test, you're likely going to be doing this in one sitting. So I do recognize that. So you can sort of keep that in mind in terms of difficulty level. Yeah, that's mostly it for format. So again, there will be 31 questions on the test. The first 30 are going to be multiple choice questions, much like you've seen before in the homework quizzes, same format. And then the last question will be that free response question where you're prompted to write code that does something. And again, that's where you're going to have to do this sort of, I'll admit it's annoying. I know it is. This is just one of those things that we have to do since we're fully online. You'll switch away from paragraph into pre-formatted before you start typing. Cool. All right. A couple more details that I want to give you just because we are in sort of this online exam format, which for some folks, this might be the first time you're taking an online exam. I will say it's going to look exactly like your homework quizzes. Your homework quizzes are using the same sort of feature on Canvas as this midterm will use, so it will look really similar to them. Like the homework quizzes, you can only submit the exam once. I'm going to repeat that again. You can only submit the midterm exam once. So this is the sort of practice one. Once you click the submit quiz, That's it. That's your submission for the midterm. So please make sure you don't click this button, submit quiz, until you are ready to submit it. With the test, I encourage you, there will be, multiple questions here, like I said, multiple choice, and then the free response. You're welcome to jump around. You can scroll down and jump between questions. They don't necessarily have to be completed in order. Do what makes the most sense for you. Again, a reminder, you have that full 48-hour window to do the exam. There is no time limit outside of that 48-hour window. So, if you start it right when the exam opens at November 8th at 11:59 p.m., in theory, you have 48 whole hours to sit that exam. I don't know why you would want to do that to yourself. I mean, I hope you get some sleep, please, during this time. But what that does mean is that since that due date is November 10th, 11:59 p.m., let's say you start the exam at 11 on November 10th. That means you're only going to have 59 minutes to do it, right? So you have that full 48-hour window, and there's no additional time limit outside of the deadline itself. So again, this is going to be a little bit on you to sort of make sense of your scheduling and figure out what time frame is going to work the best for you. I don't like to say, here's a suggested time expectation for the exam, because I know some folks take more or less time on exams for, various reasons. I will say, though, I've given very similar exams in this exact same format with, 30 multiple choice and then one free response question in my in-person classes. And my in-person classes are usually 2 hours long. And I would say, 95% of students finish the exam within those 2 hours. I would say a majority of students probably finish it at the 1 hour mark. So to be safe, I would probably give yourself 2 hours during that window to work on it. That said, though, I don't recommend starting it really late on the night that it's due, right? For various reasons. Your internet goes out. It's on you to find a backup plan, right? So you don't want that to happen last minute. Make sure, whatever your backup plan for technology is that we talked about at the beginning of the quarter, you have that ready to go. You start it early so that if something does come up, you have time to deal with it. Couple other just sort of nuances about the online exam format. You will not see the correct answers to the multiple choice questions right after you submit it. There's a couple of reasons for that. I'm not going to get into it, but so don't sit there like refreshing trying to see your score, because it's going to not happen right away. Those will appear after the exam is due, and then the free response question, the one at the very end where you have to type the code into the text box, that one needs to be graded by hand, so I have to grade that myself. That said, I appreciate your patience as I am getting those grades out for it. That said, I very much know what it's like to be a student and to be anxious while you're waiting for your exam grades to come back, so I'm going to do what I can to get your scores back to you as quickly as possible, but I also appreciate you understanding in advance that I will have to grade that final question by hand. So, cool. And then this piece right here, it's a repeat of the above, of that reminder of needing to select pre-formatted instead of paragraph for that one question. And again, I know that's super weird, but that's why I'm giving you this sort of practice question that you can practice on before the test, so that when you get into it, it's not as weird. Cool. All right, let's go into materials and rules. So you really don't need anything for this test. All you need is a computer with internet access to Canvas specifically, since the test is on Canvas. That said, you might want to think about having a pen and paper in front of you for scratch work and stuff like that. As far as what's not allowed, calculators are not allowed. That includes both, physical calculators and also calculators on your computer or online. There will likely be some questions where you have to do, a little bit of math to, show your answer. That said, I will go out of my way to make sure that any questions on the test that are math related are, relatively simple math. So don't worry too much about the math piece. Like I said, computer with internet access the exam on Canvas, and you are not allowed to use outside resources. So what I mean by that is, this exam, it is closed notes, it's closed book. All those notes, videos, assignments, documents, etc., everything on Canvas, I do not want you accessing that during the exam. All right, so this is going to be on you. Make sure you are sort of emulating that in-person experience of taking an exam. Don't use the book, don't use notes, don't refer to the videos either on Canvas or through YouTube. Don't reference your previous assignments. You also are not allowed to have idle up on your computer either, or whatever text editor or IDE you've been using for writing your code. No other websites, no other references. Basically, it's you and the exam, right? Maybe a piece of paper for scratch paper, but that's it. Also super important, you cannot communicate with other people about the test during the open exam window, especially other people in the class. So, don't go to the tutoring center trying to get help with this test. The tutoring center knows what the test looks like. They will decline your request. Don't talk to, people outside of class. Don't talk to, siblings, parents, whatever, who know how to code. Don't talk to other students in the class. And this applies during the entire window the exam is open. So, there might be a period in time where you are done with the exam, but other students are still taking it. So that whole time, please do not talk about the exam with other people. I do want to make a call out as well for anyone who might be tempted. Every student is going to have different questions, so even if you try to collaborate with different students in the class, it's not going to help. I do promise the questions will all be of the same topic, and they will be the same level of difficulty. It'll just be like the numbers are changed, for example. So do not refer to other students' exams. It will make it very obvious to me if you are getting answers from other people. So just want to give you that heads up now. The exception, of course, if you have questions about the exam while you're taking it, you can contact me. You can contact the instructor if you have questions, and I'll talk about what that looks like in a second. All right, topics and study guide. Really, this exam is covering everything from weeks 0 through 5 inclusive. So it includes everything week 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. There are some topics that we are going to be covering in week 5. Or apologies, there are going to be some topics that we cover in week 6. Let me pull up the module view. And this looks like a lot because I can see a little bit more than you can right now. But if I look at week 6, and ignore these dates are completely wrong, but during the week of the exam, there's going to be sort of the two parts where part A is basically going to be the midterm exam, and part B is going to be new content. Now, part B, week 6, is not covered on the midterm exam. So the midterm exam only covers stuff that we've talked about before the exam. So you don't have to worry about the new stuff that you're learning the week of the exam, because that would not be fair. So everything on Canvas from week 0 through week 5 inclusive is fair game. So that includes, the lecture videos, the homework quizzes, lab assignments, programming assignments, the various pages like the how-to pages, the practice pages. It also includes the textbook reading, so be careful about that as well. So all that is fair game. This is a list of topics that I've compiled. I basically just sort of took the topic overview from each week's section and compiled them here. So if you do want sort of a study guide with a list of topics, it's right here. I know it's a lot, so I'm not going to sit here and read through them because that isn't going to help any of us. But yeah, so this is a list of topics if you need that reference. All right. Next thing I want to talk about is just some general study tips about the exam. And now some of these are going to be general to test taking in general, and then some of them are going to be specific to this particular test. My suggestion, since you have this topic list given to you, go ahead and go through this topic list, maybe print it out or save it into a Word doc or something like that, and rate your scale of understanding of each one of these topics between 1 to 5, right? Kind of similar to that one journal entry that we did, I want to say 1 or 2 weeks ago. So that's what I would do first. Rate your level of understanding for each one, 1 to 5. And then set a schedule for yourself. And your schedule might look different than someone else in the class depending on what your ratings are. Set a schedule for yourself to review each of those topics if needed. Just be careful to make sure that schedule is realistic, but also, is with adequate pacing to cover what you need to cover. And then I would suggest, of course, starting with the topics that have your lowest rating first. I think that is the reason why I would go through and, list out the rating before you even start, because then, you can sort of prioritize the pieces where you think you might need extra focus. For review, review all the material that's on Canvas. I would say especially review anything that you've missed points on. So, any homework quiz questions that you might have missed, any lab assignments or programming assignments where you might have missed points. Double check, where you missed those points, determine why you missed the points, and what you could do differently to, not miss those points in the future. I think the textbook is especially going to be helpful, especially if you're looking for, extra content on a topic that you're not sure about, one of your lower rated topics. For the multiple choice questions on this quiz or on this midterm in particular, review the homework quizzes and practice them again by hand, right? So make sure you're doing it, with pen and paper, not with help of Idle or your computer. I may or may not be reusing some homework quiz questions on the midterm, so definitely review those. For the written code piece, for those, I would recommend revisiting the practice pages that I have posted on Canvas. Let me pull up an example really quick. So like here, in week 4, I have a page right here, practice writing your own nested for loops, or practice writing with nested for loops, or practice with nested for loops, or let's see, what else do we have? We have practice writing function definitions, right? So all these sort of extra practice pages that I give you that aren't for points, I think that's a great time to revisit them or to look at them for the first time if you haven't yet already as you're preparing for the exam. Again, this little hint is just referring to on the exam itself, that question where you're writing the code, there will be a rubric on it that says, you get 1 point for this, 1 point for that. Since that is how I'm grading the question, use it to kind of guide your response to the question. And then this tip is referring to this sort of practice not graded quiz that you will have access to before the test. Use this to practice typing out some code directly into Canvas because, like I said, it is a little weird. I get that, so please do take some time to practice it in advance. In general, again, review all the materials, practice writing random code, and I mean quite literally just type out random code in Idle, and once you type it out, try to figure out what's going to happen when you run it, right? So type out some code, which is great because then you get some practice typing with syntax, that sort of stuff. Test out, what is going to happen when I run this code? What is going to be displayed? Or what is the return value of this? Or, what is this code doing? Write it on paper, try to determine what's going on, then run the code and see if you were correct. I think that's a great way to practice. You're welcome to use the Canvas discussion topic that we have to organize study groups. I know it's kind of a general ask questions here, but you can also, who wants to join a study group? That's a question, right? So feel free to use that to make study groups. I know study groups are kind of weird right now since we're all remote, but Discord's a thing, Zoom's a thing. Y'all can get creative in terms of how you want to connect with each other if that's something you want to do to help study for the test. That said, this is just a little reminder of you can collaborate before the test to study together, but please do not collaborate during the test. And again, a reminder, collaborating during the test, I will know when you do that since everyone's going to have different questions. So just be aware of that. This is a pro tip that I picked up probably halfway through undergrad myself, and it seems super obvious to me now, but I didn't really think of it. I was definitely the student that, I hated taking exams in school, so I feel for all you right now, but I was definitely a student of, once I finished the test, I just wanted to turn it in, get out of there, get on with the rest of my day, right? Now, you have so much time, especially for this test, and it's worth taking an extra, let's say 30 minutes out of your life to quite literally go through the entire test again. And I don't mean just skim the questions, be like, yeah, that seems right. I mean literally work out the problems a second time. I cannot tell you how many times I have turned into the test quickly to get out of there as quickly as possible, and then 5 minutes later something dawned on me and I realized I messed up a question. That has happened to me so many times, and I think this is the best way to combat that happening in the future. So just quite literally do the test again. Just remember, you can only submit once, right? So don't click that submit button until you've done your review, you're ready to actually turn it in. Awesome. Whew, I know this is a lot. Hopefully this video is helpful. Last thing I just want to cover is just questions. So if you do have questions about the exam before the exam happens, when I say before the exam, I mean before the exam window starts, right? So if you have questions before that exam window begins, use our general course questions topic post on Canvas. I guarantee if you have that question, at least one other student has that question, so it will benefit others if you post it to here rather than email me. So that could be anything from, if you need help with a certain topic or you're confused about something in the notes, or if you're thinking about, you're reviewing the format, you're thinking about the online format details, and you realize there's something I didn't cover, you have a question about something about the logistics, anything like that, go ahead and post it to the Ask General Course Questions here. Now, once the exam window starts, I want you to instead, if you have questions about the exam, and this could be, about format, about if you're actually in the exam taking it and you're not sure about one of the questions and you need to run something by me, during the exam, I'm going to ask that you not post to the general course questions discussion topic that we have. And this is during the entire 48-hour period. So again, remember, just because you're done with the exam doesn't mean everyone else is done with it, just given the nature of how it's set up for this class. So if you have any questions during the exam, go ahead and email me directly. I know typically my email policy is that I'll respond within 24 hours. During the 24 hours that the exam is running, I'm going to be watching my email like a hawk unless I am asleep. So I will be much more responsive to email over those 2 days. So send me a question. Give me some time, to respond. I do have a life. I do other things outside of class. But give me adequate time to respond, but I will be getting back to you much quicker during that exam window than I would normally. I'm also, I recognize that maybe you don't like emails, maybe typing stuff out is annoying. If you have a question about the test and you prefer to ask me verbally, that's fine. Just send me an email and say, hey, can we set up a Zoom call really quick? And I can set that up. Just let me know what works best for you. That said, again, going back to the idea of, yes, I will be watching my email very closely during that 48-hour period, but, if you start the exam and there's only an hour left, I can't, necessarily guarantee that I'll respond to questions in time. So please, again, I'm giving you a lot of freedom here with this 48-hour window. Start the exam early if you can, just in case you run into questions and you do need to reach out to me. That way I have enough time to respond. Or just in case something weird happens with technology, like power outage or internet's out or anything like that, it is on you to make sure this exam is submitted by this November 10th, 11:59 p.m. deadline, no matter what. There are absolutely no exceptions for submissions for the midterm and final exams. So yeah. That said, I know this was a lot. I would rather you feel overwhelmed right now watching this video than when you open up the exam for the first time. So that's why this is feeling like a lot. I'm giving you a bunch of information right now so that when you get into the exam, you're feeling comfortable and ready for it. So, take some time, sort of digest this information that we just went over, read through everything here. This is literally where I'm, talking off of right now. It's just this same page that you have access to in Canvas. Again, if you have questions, use that general course questions here. You can reach out to me directly as well if you prefer that. End of the day, the midterm is not worth that much of your grade for this quarter, so I would say don't worry about it too much, but do, use this as an opportunity to sort of check in with yourself, see what topics you might be needing a little bit of extra help with, and, let me know if I can help at all while as you're studying, as you're preparing. And yeah, that's all I got. Hope you're all doing well. Reach out to me if you have questions, and take care, everyone.